Yes.
All right. Take a quick glance around the room. 2, 4, 6. Oh, so close. 23. 40.
Somebody lean out the door and yell, "Come on in."
All right, that's the number 25. Walk there. All right, so we now have a quorum. And there's one. Cool. So with that said, there were 2 items left on the agenda, and I think a question had been raised previously as to whether it would behoove us as a body to hear Joe Burns' presentation first. Joe, have you come to a conclusion on whether you think it would behoove us?
I think it would. I think it would help inform the body as to what the development team is working on that should help with budget problems.
Okay. If somebody would like to make a motion to do that.
Make a motion.
It's been moved to suspend the agenda to proceed to Joe Burns' presentation, and it's been seconded. Is there objection? I hear no objection. All right.
Okay, so first, I want to kind of sidetrack. This is part of what I was going to do later, but I've got a proposal that I promised I would put before you guys by a volunteer that I've recruited in my capacity. We're kind of going over how do we cookie cutter the approach to getting volunteers, getting in their wallet, and getting them to donate their time to the party. And we're taking the concept, the approach that don't ask for donations to the party, don't ask for time, donation of time or money to the party. Ask them first what their sacred cow issue is. Find out what their passion is, because as we all know as volunteers, if you're working on something you're not really that into, you're not going to put a lot of effort into it. You're probably going to burn out a lot quicker. But if it's your sacred cow, if you're only in politics because the government's trying to take your guns, or you're only in politics because you believe in the freedom of peaceful people to cross borders, if that's your issue, then we need to find a way to plug these people into the issue they feel most strongly about and give them the reins to run with. We need to facilitate that transaction, if you will, and provide them what they need, whether that be information, links to people that can help them along that path, whether it be a special project in the budget that only relies on directed donations so that project survives if people want it to survive, or dies if people don't want it badly enough. So that we don't have to build this huge bureaucracy and then come up with this inane idea of sunset laws to stop the bureaucracy that we're creating. So I say, why create the bureaucracy to begin with? So in our discussions, we've uncovered some fundamental flaws in the way the party is set up from a budgetary process and a bureaucracy type setting. So in doing this, and me trying to find my sea legs, not having recruited before, I've hired a lot of people in my career as an entrepreneur, but I've never recruited people to work for me for free. So it's a different ballgame, So one of my first efforts at this, I approached it first, what is your sacred cow? Let's have a discussion about that sacred cow. Where do you stand on that issue? And then secondly, what's your problem with the state party? What do you not like about the state party? What are we doing wrong? When you look at LP Texas, what do you think, man, I wish these guys would do X. What is X? What do you think ought to be done about that? What is your solution to what you see, what you've identified as problem X? So I get those 2 pieces of information, and then I basically asked them to do something about it. I said, okay, if this is your sacred cow, if this is what you see is wrong with LP Texas, are you willing to do something other than comment on it. Some people you'll find are only willing to vote libertarian. Some people are only willing to vote libertarian, aren't even willing to admit it. Some people are willing to go whole hog. I want to run for SLEC, and I've only been a libertarian for 2 weeks. But at least as a volunteer, you're starting to understand where they're coming from. You're getting their story. And Les Malden, I don't know if anybody knows who Les Malden is. I found him, or I connected with him the first time on a Facebook post where he was complaining about the state party not doing certain things. And so I tried my little experiment with him, and it resulted in him typing up a proposal for me to put in front of you guys, because he felt like that, and I'm probably not doing him justice, but he and I had an agreement that I would throw this in front of you guys for discussion, for possible movement at a later time. But he felt like we are not doing enough marketing, and the marketing that we're doing isn't focused and isn't a good representation of our principles, and it's not an effective version of marketing. And specifically within the minority demographics. His sacred cow issue is the government treads on all of us, but most hard on minorities. They get the biggest brunt of the blow of the federal government. And so we need to reach out to him and make it easier on him. So I said, okay, well, what would you like to see us do? You want to see a specific marketing plan? You want to see Facebook ads? What do you want to see? And what are you willing to do? So I suggested that we do a special project so that the money that would fund this thing that he thinks the state party should do is separate from our budget, and it's reliant upon what he and the other people that share that vision are able to raise. And Les has offered to start the project with the $250 donation, and he's offered to head up the special project with SLEC oversight, however we do that. So I need to find out, I still haven't done this yet, but I need to find out how we form these special projects, how we set up the direct donation thing, what the SLEC, what control they have over this, because obviously if it's a party function, we can't just turn him loose and go do whatever you wish, because that can end up embarrassing us or what have you. So we need to get together and figure that all out so that we can plug these people in. So I want to get that out of the way, and I do want opinions from you guys on how to go about doing that, because my intent is that if we perfect this cookie cutter approach to acquiring volunteers and plugging them in, then all we have to do is facilitate these situations. And as we go, finding volunteers, plugging them in, rinse and repeat, we're going to look back a year later, we're going to have an army. Our party is going to be healthy, and the issues that people want to fight on are going to be fought on. And the issues that don't have enough support are going to be bankrupt and not being worked on. So because people will put their money and their time where their mouth is if it's something they care about. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking in my position in Andrew's department. So that being said, with the budget, obviously we're facing a position here, and I'm not fully prepared to give the plan that I'm formulating, because it's still in the formulation stages. But to give you guys some background, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I own my own company since 7th grade. I've always worked for myself, although I have taken other jobs along the way. And I would say that if you don't understand entrepreneurship, you can basically divide us into 3 types. You have family entrepreneurs who are running the family business. They grew up in it. They're entrepreneur by birth. You have experts in a particular field who are badasses at what they do, like a Bill Gates, who was not a natural entrepreneur, but he became one because of his expertise and the one thing that he's in. And then you have nuts and bolts entrepreneurs who are not an expert in any one given trade. Their expertise lies in the nuts and bolts of putting a company together, increasing revenue, decreasing expenses, and setting that cycle up to last into perpetuity even if they disappear from the company. And that nuts and bolts guy, that's my level of entrepreneurship. So you understand where I'm coming from and how I think about problem solving this. I look at the Libertarian Party, and I hesitate to say this, but I have to be as honest as I can be, because I've been hired to flip failing companies And this is, if I were to look at the Libertarian Party in the state of Texas as a company that is in need of flipping, I don't think any of my clients would have they would have already filed for Chapter 11. It wouldn't be flippable. It wouldn't be salvageable. It would be sell it off, get as much recovery as we can on the pieces, but get rid of it and start them. So I dug through the financials back when Cassie first put out the report, and I did a pretty deep dive into them, far enough to know that I really didn't like what I saw, but I didn't know enough. I was new to the class, had no idea how the other things worked. I'm not used to governing by committee. I'm used to being an entrepreneur and seeing a problem, making it go away. But we all have to decide, we're all the entrepreneur, and we all have to put our 60 heads together and agree on how we move forward. So at this point, we're facing a budget dilemma. The two options right now that we're faced with are either strip the company, meaning killing Cassie's plan, which is to strip the expenses down to match the revenue, or we have to increase the revenue to match the expenses. And I think John's version is, while I'm very much not a proponent of even pledging to spend money we don't have yet, that's the opposite of what libertarians ought to be about. I think it's the only choice for the survival of our party, because if we strip it, you've pretty much signed the death warrant to the party from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Now, I will say that I don't believe if we vote to approve a deficit budget, it won't be deficit for long, because what we have planned should bring some much needed cash into the party within a few months. What we're working on, because we're still getting the building blocks for how we're going to go about reaching out to every name that we have in Nation Builder and making contact with every single one of those names. On top of the spreadsheet I have from National, 22,000 people that we've already got probably 8 or 9 volunteers working on, because we're doing a membership drive for National, because we want the largest delegation we can get, so that we have as big a say as possible on how National does what they do, because as a lot of people have accurately said in this room, a lot of times National is more of an anchor to us than a help in a lot of ways. And so a lot of our volunteers in Texas don't want anything to do with National. So we want to increase our voice so that and especially for Austin, Texas, because it's right in our backyard, we're going to have plenty of delegates. We want to make sure that our voice is as large as possible. So we've been working to increase that, and we've got this data dump from National. And with 22,000 names, plus whatever we've got in Nation Builder, if we put the effort into putting ourselves in front of these people, whether it be face-to-face or phone contact, email's fine, but you need to go further. It's got to be face-to-face or phone. If we can do that, we can raise the money we need. The sums that we're looking at, quite honestly, are pretty paltry in the big perspective. So I think that we've got a plan to give us the revenue that we need. Along those lines, as a member of SLEC is considered putting forth a motion. I'm not going to move for it, but I think it's an idea that needs to be discussed, and that's the possibility of saying, okay, we approve this budget with the concept of raising X amount of money by, say, March. If we haven't raised that money, then the members in this room chip in and make it happen. We pull out our wallets and we put in the money to bring it up to that. Because if we're going to vote as the controlling body of the bank account, if we're going to vote on a deficit budget, then we better have a plan for making it happen. And if that plan fails, we need to be ready to reach into our wallets, because if not us, who? And if we can lead by example in that regard, it makes fundraising that much easier too. So I'm not going to make that motion, but I want you guys to consider that possibility, and maybe someone will make a motion like that. I don't know. There are. I could argue for and against it. I think there are valid points on either end, but we have to increase revenue and cut expenses. I haven't done a deep dive into the expenses for what can be cut. I'm going to do that, because I've also got a background in accounting. But the revenue side has got to come up. I mean, the money we raise compared to other organizations, if you look at organizations like Young Americans for Liberty with a multi-million-dollar budget, they make us look like we don't know what we're doing. So part of the concept of getting these volunteers and plugging them in also lends itself to a budget that looks more like a business's budget. I mean, we complain about bureaucracy. That's most of what we do. We're against the duopoly's bureaucracy and this growth of government, and yet here we are. When we look at our budget, we've created a small version of what they've done for us at the federal level. How are we to ever convince voters that we are the ones with the right ideas if our solution looks like a mini-me of their solution?
Can you elaborate on that? I'm not getting that point. Now our budget looks like a bureaucracy.
Okay, because of the way we're organized and the way we have 60 people controlling the entire budget, I would approach it like this. When I go to analyze the financial statements and the income statement specifically, I want to look at each of those expenses from the point of, can this expense be a special project surviving on directed donations alone? Or is it something that won't work for it? This has to be a function of our base budget. So if it can be forced to rely on its own means of survival, then we get it off of our basic budget. And if you do that with every line item, you come down to, this is what we have to have, bare bones, bare minimum, to pay the light bills, to pay the office rent, or what have you. And then you look at those things and you try to streamline them any way you can. And by streamline, I don't mean the cheapest price, I mean the most efficient, the biggest bang for your buck, and we decide whatever that is on each of those things. Like we mentioned a few of them earlier, the credit card processing companies. That's one item that needs to be put out as a request for proposal and bid out. We all need to decide on how that is. And I leave no opinion on what those decisions should be because I haven't analyzed them yet, but I think it's imperative upon us to dig into our balance sheet and our income statement and make sure that we're operating as lean as possible. What I envision is getting us to a point where other states envy our organization and how it does what it does. I see a well-oiled machine operating on a shoestring budget, not because we're restricted to a shoestring budget, but because we have effectively made it work on a shoestring budget so that other money that comes in can be put towards issue-based special projects and can get the things done that our donors want to see done. Everybody knows who's ever raised money for politics knows you can't just go ask your donor for, hey, will you give $20 to my campaign? You can do that, but you're probably not going to get it. If you ask them, hey, I need $12 because $12 buys me a radio spot. How many radio spots can I count on for you? Well, your donations are exponential compared to what you got asking it the other way, because now the buyer gets a product. The buyer knows, man, I put this dude into 3 radio spots instead of just I gave so and so $20 and I hope he go with God. You know, so you get a product back and you feel invested in this campaign or this party. So I think we have long made the mistake of asking for donations to the party, asking for donations of time to the party when we need to be able to say, we need money for this. Is this something you believe in? And if it is, we need you to put your money here and write on the check this name for the directed donation, what the special project is that it goes to, no matter what that is. I'm not saying everything can be special project outed, because it can't, but we need to determine that. And we need to be about the business of doing that because, frankly, we failed. We wouldn't even be having this budget discussion right now had we succeeded. If this were a successful business venture, we'd be discussing how to spend all the money we got. And we're not. We're trying to figure out why we don't have the money we said we were going to have and why we're in the hole that we're in. So, to me, we're ripe for a restructure because some things failed. I mean, we've had our successes. I'm not all rain clouds, but the numbers don't lie. It's pure math. I mean, you take a look at our balance sheet and our income statement. They don't lie. They don't tell a success story. So my thought process here on the development team is I've got to find a way to get the most money and time out of our volunteers, donors, what have you, as I possibly can. And I know that I can do more, I can achieve more if I can give them something that fits what they're passionate about, if I can direct that. And then we can beat them upside the head for the $25 a year that covers our main budget, that covers the keep the lights on thing. There will be people that donate large sums of money like me who understand, yeah, we want to be able to do all the special projects, but we got to keep the lights on. So there are going to be people that will donate specifically for that. in effect, our operating budget is its own special project. And so people would know if you're giving money directly to the party and you're not putting on direct donation, here's what that goes to cover. It covers our, our meetings, our convention, our, whatever the case may be. But I feel like that's the mentality that we need to have in approaching this problem. And not just to make us solvent, because we're not solvent right now. I mean, that's just a financial truth. We're not a solvent body today. But not just to get us solvent, but I think if we approach this with the idea of a libertarian solution in mind, we can set an example for how government ought to be. I mean, because realistically, the way our body operates is very much like the way the Texas House and Senate operates. And we have a bunch of elected representatives that get together and decide how the budget is fit. We're just a smaller version of that. I think we have a unique opportunity to set an example to the duopoly and all the independent voters out there. Look at how the Libertarian Party operates its organization, juxtapose that against the government, and you start seeing that they've given us a good example. This is how our state government ought to operate. And I think having it based on free market solutions and voluntary exchanges and giving that example could do great things for us if we do it right. If we set that example, we have a unique opportunity here to do what we're telling the government to do. So why don't we set an example and say, here you go, this is the roadmap. Just do what we did, only on a bigger scale. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking. So I wanted to throw that out there to get feedback from you guys, what your thoughts and processes are on that, because I already know exactly what I'd do if this were my company. That it would be just a matter of writing up a feasibility study, having certain people shoot holes in it, forming the business plan, going to the bank, breaking ground. I already have that, but I'm not in control. We are in control. So I've got to find out, I've got to get feedback from you guys, because I can't just say this is what we need to do, because if y'all don't agree, then I'm going to waste my time. So, so kind of like Lee was saying about the IT thing, he can explore whatever, but why waste my time exploring this route if the whole group is going to put the kibosh on that after I've dropped 10 hours of research into it? So I want to kind of get some feedback from you guys about that, the thinking that we're in and the train of thought.
Assuming we don't go your route, we stick with the zero discretionary budget, and there just ain't no money. This is kind of a question of, is it legal for someone to underwrite a fundraising campaign? Like, you want to send out 1,000 letters and it's going to cost $100, and so I say, okay, I'll front the $100 and I get the first 100 out of what's raised, and then you get the rest. Is that legal? Could we do that?
You got to talk to an attorney.
I
We got several in the room. I
can answer that. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. One, so we actually kind of recently did that. An email is plan on reading from West Benedict near at the end of the budget discussion. But I'll go ahead and tell you what he did. So for that letter, we put up about $2,000 from the party from two different budget categories, split between development and political, because it was kind of a project that had
About 1,600.
Yeah, had about 1,600. Yeah.
They-
And the target amount of letters they wanted to send out was a little higher than that would facilitate. So Archie Bianca and West Benedict threw in their own money.
direct donations.
Yeah. Well, no,
I mean, it's
wasn't.
the idea
So
to that project.
So the way they did that is they wrote a check directly to the company that was printing the letters. And we are recording it as an in-kind donation, a special category of donation for the TDC. It basically covers things that are not money. If somebody came in and gave us a new car, that would not be money, but it would be an in-kind donation of a car. So we're recording that as an in-kind donation. That is one option for any kind of project that people want to do. And it's actually an option that I kind of prefer over setting up a project for a number of reasons. One, if we have a $4,000 project, we put up a project and we get $3,000 and the package we need is $4,000. We didn't hit our goal, so what do we do with this $3,000? You know, Do we go and track down all the donors and send their checks back? I mean, you know,
No, you empower that special project, the leader of that special project, to do what he needs to do. In other words, reevaluate and make the best decision. And that's why when you set up a special project, like I was saying about Lee, you put him in the place because he's an expert at what he's doing. So when you decide that this is going to be the head of this special project, whoever that is, you give them the entrepreneurial free reign to get things done with what they're given.
okay.
Because if you then have to, the problem you mentioned, if you then come back to, okay, we've only got 3,000, what do we do now? Well, the next SLEC meeting's 2 months later, we gotta wait so we can ask all of them what to do on this. You just hamstrung yourself and repeated the mistakes that the federal government makes on a daily basis. So what I'm suggesting, or what I'm hoping I can convince people of in this room, is to streamline these things and I'll give those that you trust the power to do what needs to be done. And maybe you pick a point for reevaluation, like you do in business contracts. I mean, I've developed self-storage properties where I had free reign, I could do whatever I want, and my investors were obligated to fund new projects so long as their ROI was 25%. I mean, when their ROI is 25%, they're pretty happy. But if it dropped to 24, they reevaluate. I can be replaced.
Y'all didn't answer the question.
So I'm
Sorry.
I'm trying to get to the answer. That's one method that they can do that, is by directly writing a check and giving an item or a service to the party as an in-kind donation. The other option would be through a directed donation or an authorization of SLEC, where we authorize the funding and then they give it back to us. Now, back to the reimbursement side on the back end, we can authorize checks to go out to anyone we want.
I'm thinking straight up, smallest scale. Let's say we decide to have a bake sale,
Okay.
and I say, okay, I'll go pick up the cupcakes, pay me back after the bake sale.
Yeah.
What's the legality of that?
You mean legality from state law or from our bylaws?
Both.
There is, no, we can do that, that's fine.
Okay, so even if we have zero budget, if someone is willing to front the money for these donation drives, they can front it and get paid back later if we make the money back.
If that's the agreement.
If SLEC chooses to pay them back, yes.
Oh, okay.
It would be up to the body, and that's a big risk that we've ran into on a lot of these things, is we tell people, yeah, so we promise SLEC's really cool and they'll give you your money back, and they usually do. So their risk is, will this body choose to do it?
Point of information, I think this is a good time in the flow of the meeting. Could you pull up our rules and go to this section where it talks about budgeting and authorization for expenditures, which are two separate concepts? Because there's been a lot of discussion about this in the formulation of those rules over the years, and I think just seeing what their current rules are, which is, I think, really may address his question too. Would be instructive to me, not everybody else.
And while
I don't know, yeah, I think John does.
Stephen, do you want to allow the debate, can you call people while I get all this going on?
I am, this stuff.
I understand, you're very confident that you can raise the target goals of money in the next couple of months, correct?
Depending upon the number, yeah.
Wait a minute.
Well, I mean, you say the target goals, whatever those targets are. I mean, you could say, are you confident you can raise $1 million? Are you confident you can raise 10,000?
I assume when you were talking about raising the money, you kind of had a specific numbers and that you wanted to achieve in mind.
Right, we're getting there, yes.
Wouldn't it make more sense then for us to bet on your competence to do that and then keep the budget at zero? And I mean, we would have to pull money from these accounts like the treasurer suggested, but go ahead and bet on your competence to be able to raise that money before the next quarterly meeting?
That's pretty much what I'm going on. I mean, that's the idea that I've got in mind. I mean, I'm looking at two different things here. I've got my single vote as an SLEC member, and then I've got what I know that Andrew and I and others are working on behind the scenes. So I have, and this is a rarity, I have to make that extremely clear. I would not vote on a negative budget, were it not for my confidence in us being able to put the revenue to where it won't be negative for long.
But what's the value in making it a negative budget for a quarter? Where's our value in that? Because the analogy continues to be that we don't want to be like the federal government. The federal government continues to run at a negative deficit, banking on the fact that they're going to be able to tax the shit out of us and take that money, which I know you're not taking the money forcefully, but it's still the same concept of we're betting on a futures market, where I would rather say, why don't we bet on you that you can do exactly what you say you can do by the next quarter and give you the freedom to be able to do that without going into a negative deficit.
That's a reasonable solution. I have no problem with that. Neil?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I move to authorize the development department and executive officers from time to time to propose and take all actions to set up designated fundraising campaigns for specified projects, provided that the amounts for any given project shall be no greater than $10,000 and no funds shall be designated as restricted funds without further SLEC approval.
You have that written?
Yeah.
Seconded.
I object, actually.
You don't say.
I second the objection.
Somebody's got it. I mean, we're libertarians, right?
Well, Tom's specific part became clear down at first.
Well, I think there is. And I don't know if Neil's motion may already be in the rules for all I know.
No, I think it's what John showed us.
So I would postpone the motion.
Take a minute, let the secretary record the motion, then we can continue with discussion. We have to dispose of the motion before we move on.
And I presume John's looking at this, so.
I am, that's section that we're to bylaws, so I'm going over there now.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to pull the directed donations on it first since the motion's on this.
Well, that's in policy manual.
Point of information?
Yeah, so whatever we were gonna talk about here as far as, well, the conversation we had in place, that we stop, now we consider the motion and work on that. We can't keep talking about this while he's working.
Yeah, the motion has to be.
We have to dispose.
Really?
Motion's been
I mean,
submitted and seconded, so.
Yeah, so now we're in the motion.
But we can discuss them.
we can discuss
Discuss
it,
motion, right.
Well, we can
but
discuss
he's asking about discussing
I had something on.
the rest of the
conversation.
the discussion.
So the body is not trying to make individuals.
Forced the discussion of the motion. I think I went to order.
Can I even continue talking what Joe's talking about? And I know there's a motion on the floor, and no.
So, according to Robert's rules, we have one item at a time that we discuss. And right now, we have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. So if you have a question about the motion, or would like clarification of the motion, we can discuss the motion.
I'm going to actually move that we take a 10-minute recess while I pull our
Second.
bylaws, because there's a lot going on right now.
All right?
Second.
Any objection to a 10-minute recess? Motion carried.
Can we talk here at the recess?
Yes.
We can wait.
Oh, wait, John says you set the timer.
I've got it.
But we may not be able to sell them all. Yeah, right there. Okay. 5 more minutes.
And then it does
Because I've been in the Pre-existing, and then after that, first day, whatever day, like, we have authorizations to finish this done. And if we spend it otherwise, we can be all fired. We eliminate it. We spend it wisely, that's a good thing. Maybe we can afford more. If we spend it unwisely, it's a bad idea.
I don't think it's happening. So the special projects policy is very
That's the simple version. Everything else is cake. Well, that's our God. If you're honest, we go down each so we ensure our survival. But I don't
All right, I am taking back the gavel at this point. I have found all the relevant places in our rules, bylaws, and policy. And before we go any further on discussions of spending matters, I am going to execute my privilege and go through what we can and cannot do with regard to spending. These directives, I'll call them, cover 3 different documents. So I'm going to go through those and in brief tell you what the documents are and how much power these different documents have over us and how much we have over them. So I'm going to start with the most powerful of them, the rules. Rules are set to outline our party structure and our party power. And they are amendable in 2 ways. One at convention by a 2/3 vote, and one by a 4/5 vote of the entire body of very high bar to get over. I've only seen it happen once for an emergency situation. So basically, our rules state that in compliance with these rules and the directives of conventions, the state executive committee of the party shall carry on the activities of the party at its level between conventions and shall have the control and management of all party affairs, properties, and funds. So basically what this says is who spends money? SLEC spends money, not the chair, not the treasurer, SLEC. Second, bylaws. Bylaws are a document that once we are given authority, govern how we execute that authority, how we're allowed to do that. It is amendable by a 2/3 vote of the entire body of SLEC or by a majority vote of the convention. What our bylaws say is for approval of expenditures, the state executive committee shall establish a categorized budget, including expected revenues and expenses. The budget just says how much we expect to make and how much we expect to spend. It goes on to say authorization of all expenditures shall require a majority vote of the state executive committee. That's the entire body. And that is a separate point from the budget. We establish a budget saying what we expect to spend, and then we separately authorize that budget. Quite often we do that and say this is what we expect to spend and we authorize the whole thing, but that is not required. We could say we expect to spend this, but we're only authorizing half. That is an option as well.
And there's also, you can do your authorizations over a more limited time period. than the
Yes.
entire year.
Yeah, absolutely. You can say, I authorize this quarter, I authorize this quarter, whatever, however we as a body decide to authorize that spending. Disbursements of all party funds shall require the approval of either the treasurer or the chair. It's not highlighted in there, but I will say our policy actually restricts us further. I'll go into what a policy is later, but it actually says it requires both approvals. There you go. The state executive committee shall not take loans or incur credit card debt. We don't get to go the federal government route. And then this last one, this last one's a bit more nuanced, and I'm going to read it and then I'm going to explain what it means. Unless about 2/3 vote of the entire membership of the state executive committee shall not obligate the party to pay any financial commitment in excess of that which can be repaid from unrestricted cash and automatic recurring donations expected to be received within 6 months. So where this came about is there is this weird point between having cash and taking out a loan where we sign, let's say, for the convention, a contract with a hotel. And the contract states that it is going to cost us $20,000 for a convention. We don't have $20,000, but there's a clause in there that if we sell $20,000 in food and beverage, pretty standard thing, we don't have to pay any of it. It's free for us. And we expect from past conventions that we will sell $30,000 in food and beverage. So the question came up, can we sign that contract if we don't have $20,000 on hand, even though the risk that would actually cost us $20,000 is incredibly low? There were varying opinions on it, and the compromise that were made between the varying opinions is, yes, we can, as long as we could expect to raise that money in 6 months, and 2/3 of this body agrees it's a low enough risk that we can sign the contract and probably not ever have to pay the money. So that is kind of the pseudo debt we are allowed to take on. Moving on to policy, I've highlighted here, this is the special projects that is being discussed here. I'm going to read through this really quick. Oh, before I do. I'm sorry? I can, but then we can't see the whole thing at once.
Scroll.
But scroll is kind of ugly on this thing. I'm just going to read through it, and then if we need to make it bigger, we can go back and do that. Before I read through it, though, all a policy is, this body can make motions. We do it all the time. We're doing it here. When we make a motion, that motion disappears at the end of this body's tenure. So when the convention happens and a new body is elected, everything we did is washed clean. And the new body starts fresh. We started the policy manual because we found there are certain things that probably need to continue past one body, for instance, the org structure that allows us to get volunteers. So create a policy manual that if we move to amend this, it's the same standard as a motion to amend this thing, but we're saying this is one of those motions that we should be able to burden the next body with. And they can then make a motion to change it at their time if they want. So this is the special projects part of that. It says special projects are any LP Texas sponsored activity, initiative, or event that requires their own funding outside of the existing LP Texas budget. Directed donations are funds given to LP Texas for a specific purpose outside of a general donation. A majority of LP Texas officers or of SLEC may establish a special project by submitting a special project plan to the SLEC forum. This plan must include the following information as well as any additional relevant details, and we can decide what relevant details are from case to case. What is the expected purpose of this special project? What are the expected costs to the party, including any specified expenditure amounts requiring approval? Will directed donations be accepted for this special project? What is the ending date of the special project, or is it meant to be perpetual? Who will be the point persons, leaders, directors, contacts, and/or responsible parties for this special project? What will be done with any remaining funds from the special project upon its termination? How will the success of this special project be measured? So it has to be a measurable metric. Special projects should have their own budgets, which should include detailed listings of expenditures and payees. Directed donations may only be made to establish special projects. Spending authorization of directed donations is granted upon approval of and in accordance with the special projects plan. So this was a motion to approve spending in a very specific circumstance that is perpetual to the party. So those are the three things that it's expended. Now, a motion is on the floor. Okay.
Legible.
So this motion says, the body moves to set and execute designated fundraising campaigns. Okay. I move to authorize the development department and executive officers from time to time to propose and take all actions to set up and execute designated fundraising campaigns for specified projects, provided that no amount shall be authorized greater than $10,000. No funds shall be designated. Oh, $10,000 period. No funds shall be designated as restricted funds without further select approval.
Yeah, I'm going to need to see that in writing.
May I stand to the motion?
Yeah, absolutely. You can speak to it, and while you're doing that, I will get it up on the screen.
So, look, we have a budget process we run, right? It requires certain procedures in order to win it, and from time when we're trying to raise money in basically general categories, which is our development department has said can be sometimes problematic. Typical other way you raise money is for a specified cause or purpose. Yeah. This policy, and I will would happily accept a friendly amendment to change if you sort of believe it's necessary to change my motion to be to put in policy, but it does not actually replace this policy. This policy is for restricted money, and this policy talks about disbursements in its own budget, etc. That's not what I'm trying to do here. Yeah. So what I have proposed says, as long as the money is not more than $10,000 and not coming back to us and asking what to do with it, or restricted, i.e. SLEC can always simply, by our vote, move it into general funds at a later date. Then the development department officers can make up fundraising campaigns, not disbursement campaigns, not expenditures, not authorizations to expenditures, but fundraising campaigns around specific causes that allow them to try and collect money from time to time in small amounts. Now, obviously, if one brings in 100,000 and not 10, what I propose would only give them authorization for 10, so they'd have to come back to SLEC and say, hey, we took $100,000, what do you want us to do with it? And then we would make that appropriate. That doesn't necessarily have to be account. And obviously, if they want to spend that money, they've got to then come propose a project plan under the first policy, or they've got to come propose a budget item, or come back with rather some special change for us. But this allows the development department to go and try and do some of the things that they have just said they're going to do. At most of the nonprofits I'm involved with, fundraising requires some sort of board authorization. You can't just go willy-nilly set up a fundraising campaign to go sell raccoons to people in Florida, because that might not quite meet what we want to do, maybe it's to the fundraising campaign, and we'd like to have some oversight over that. So what I've given here is a dollar delineated oversight for the development committee to do its job. I specifically not require them to come back to us for a specific purpose. So I am asking that they be given the authority to come up with purposes from time to time. I'm also not giving them the authority to figure out how to actually spend that money once it has come in to that account. And I'm giving them this authority only when it does not bind our hands on what we can do with that money down the road. For example, the classic would be you raise the 3,000 instead of the 4. These are not restricted funds. The donors cannot be told this money can only forever be used for that purpose. They can be told we intend to use it for that purpose. So 3,000 is raised. Either they can spend that 3,000 on that purpose. They can keep it there and we can keep raising more until we get to that purpose. We can match for other monies to reach the 4,000. Or 2 years down the road, and I have accounts like this sitting on many of my nonprofit books. We've got a series of little accounts with 3,000 in each. We say, you know what? Nobody's used that in 3 years. That purpose doesn't really fit, what we're trying to do this year. We don't have to call a donor because it is not restricted funds, and we're going to make in our budget process a discernment and pull that money into general funds or use it for other purposes. Thank you.
I have a question on this. Based on what you said and also reading the wording of this, I'm unclear. Would this motion authorize the development department to spend up to $10,000 on fundraising, or to take in up to $10,000 on fundraising?
To take in. If there's an account, what I expect is if there is let's say the development department was launching a campaign for ballot access, or for support of a particular filing fees in a particular county, and they bring in less than $10,000, it just goes and sits in that account. If they bring in more than $10,000, then they cannot actually put that extra $10,000 in that account without coming back to SLEC and saying, I have 15, not 10. I need you to tell me where to put the extra 5. Which we would probably just say, fine, put it in that account, great job. But it at least dollar delineates, they can't go launch a $2 million capital campaign under this without asking for further clarification.
So, in this scenario, I want to be real clear before we move on. In this scenario, they go out and they raise funds. This doesn't authorize any spending because,
Correct.
so let's say they have $500, right? And they go and they somehow turn this $500 into $20,000. I mean, currently they can do that. They can take $500 and raise $20,000 with it if they have a means. It sounds to me like this motion limits them to only raising $10,000 unless we come together as a body and say, no, you can raise more.
Is the language is intended, and if you require an amendment to clarify it, I will make an amendment. The language is intended, like I see at other nonprofit board discussions, that this is for going into a specific project. That project can't get more than 10,000, which means they cannot go out and tell people, I'm trying to raise 50 or $1 million without asking us. If they raise more, you guys can take it in, it's just a donation. But you cannot stick it in that project without asking SLEC, can we put it in the project?
So this allows us to start raising money without having to first go through the special project.
Correct. You don't have to go put all those details in for a special project. You don't have to tell a donor it's restricted.
We
You
can
don't
get
have to
started
come up
with
a
less
budget
bureaucracy,
for that
but yet we
project.
still have to come back to get authorization.
It's strictly a fundraising tool for development.
Okay, but this last,
Cleanup online for
Yeah.
amount of should be.
no amount.
So, and if you would like a clarification to the language.
We're not grating cheese here.
Oh,
Where it says, no amount shall be authorized to a specific project account greater than 10,000, comma, no fund shall be designated.
Back to the other one, we're not giving them a horse?
Mr. Hamlin.
Two questions. So you're envisioning separate bank accounts for these projects, or you mean account like in an accounting line item?
Accounting line.
Okay. And I'm not sure I understand. Okay, so I get I like we could particular marketing designated a particular demographic, we're gonna raise money for this, because we've got some guys that are excited, and they said they're gonna seed it, great. But he goes in, and we raised $9,500. Now, how does it get spent? And my concern, as a guy that would be asking people for money, is that y'all are gonna sell me out. Like, I'm gonna go campaign on doing this project, and then I'm gonna raise $9,500, and then it's gonna get spent on some new IT development
And
thing.
then we go to the other policy, which specifies restricted, actual restricted funds and requires you to put up a budget and all that, and raise it under that instead of this.
How about this? Start raising money underneath that while you're knocking out the I's and
Or you
T's.
can raise money under this and then
Of the other.
shift it over to that if you want to propose under the
But
other.
that would
policy.
prevent us from having to wait on a select approval to get
I think we're
started.
getting a little bit of this.
But what I hear you saying is
Sorry.
no guarantees on how it's.
I'm gonna come over here, Mr. Glass.
Yeah, I'm ready to go into discussion, if is that where we are? Okay. I guess, I'm gonna say at this moment, I'm gonna, oppose this motion, because I don't know what problem it's trying to solve. I think the problem we've got right now is that we don't have volunteers that have gone out and asked people for money. I think we solve our problem by having the development department just go out and ask people for money. And I think if we ask enough times, we will get the money we need. But I don't think there's anything stopping them from doing that. I just don't understand what the problem this is trying to solve, or how it solves it. And the other thing is, when I look at this, it doesn't fit. I can't shoehorn what this is saying into the rules that the series of rules, bylaws, and policies that we've already got. It just doesn't mesh in my mind to it. And so what I want to do is just encourage, I want to get to the budget stuff by talking about because ultimately the thing that we've got to do here today is we've got to come up with a budget, which is what do we expect our revenues to be. And those expectations can be based on the assumption that these guys, the development guys, are going to go out and raise some money instead of not doing anything. And because the budget we've got right now expects that we're not going to do anything to raise money. I think we don't have to expect that. I think we can expect something different. So I want to get back to the budget stuff. And then the other lever we have is the authorization. How much are we going to authorize, and for how long are we going to authorize at this point? And that's where I want to get to, and I just don't understand how what you're doing even fits into that. So that's where I'm coming from.
What the development department now said.
Hold up, this isn't a back and forth. Mr. Sharp.
Okay, mine was a question that really doesn't apply to what Tom just said. It's what I see in there is authorization to do development, authorization to raise funds up to 10,000. What I don't see is any limitation on what development department or executive officers can spend. Is it implying that I can spend my entire IT budget to raise money, or
This motion is not authorizing any spending, it's only authorizing collecting.
Okay.
So, we heard, that was more of a question, that was against. Is there anyone to speak in favor of this motion? Do you want to speak in favor?
I may need some clear, I think so.
Okay.
I'm gonna say what I wanted to say, and you tell me if it's out of order. Because responding to Tom, I don't know if this motion is the solution to the problem, but I know what the problem is. Going back to the case study, and so if this would solve that problem, then I'm definitely for the motion. We have a guy who is worked up about a particular problem. He's willing to write a check today for $250 if we can tell him it's going to go towards solving his problem. He's not going to write that check because he feels sorry for us because we're running out of money and we need money for operations. So how can we relieve this guy of his money? What can we do to assure this guy that if he writes this check, and this guy's just a placeholder for every other guy that's worked up about red flag laws or borders or cannabis or whatever else, what can we do to assure this guy that if he writes that check, that's a lot bigger than the check he would have written or the check he's not going to write for our general administrative requirements? Well, how can we give that guy some comfort and take his money and then use it to solve these problems? Because if we solve enough of these problems in their domains, we'll be solving the general problem.
If I can answer that question, is that a point of information you're asking as a question?
I was just trying to restate the problem we're trying to solve, whether this motion is the solution to that problem or not. But
So is that something you're asking?
yeah,
Okay. To guarantee him that the money will be spent on the thing that you're doing, actually, that was the purpose on the special project that restricts the funds to that.
right.
I think specifically, as I read it, says, without further select approval, funds shall be designated as restricted funds without further select approval. So it says they are restricted unless select says otherwise.
No, there's no funds that are designated.
Oh, no funds. So these funds would in fact not be.
Designated in most nonprofit fundraising, designated and restricted are very different things, and most nonprofits raise most money designated but not restricted.
Okay.
Our own current special policy only lets development raise them as restricted and then puts strings on them. Our budget policy requires detailed and time and annual expenditures. This is a fairly typical and normal carve-out that allows you to raise money but not spend it, as long as you tell them, our intention is to spend it in this area, here's a purpose. I'm gonna match your 250 with much more dollars coming in. We will figure out the detailed budget later, but you know that I'm telling SLEC this is going into a specific account, and SLEC intends for us to do something to your cause with that account, but doesn't tie our hands down the road if we choose to move it to a different account for whatever reason. As we refer to this in my church session, that's session money. It may be designated in one of the 40 different accounts for different purposes, and we have a slightly higher discernment level when we move them between accounts. We don't take it willy-nilly, but we try and honor the reason it came in. But we know those also function as reserve funds if we ever need them or if the use changes. So this is a typical carve-out that I think development is feeling they're missing.
I think we're at this point getting a little bit into argumentation. It sounds like these will be designated but not restricted. To answer the question
Point of information.
Point of information.
Point of clarification, really. So, just correct me if I have my understanding right. We do a fundraising campaign to fight red flag laws. We raise a bunch of money. Before we spend any of it, the state of Texas passes a constitutional amendment saying we will never have red flag laws. So now we can move that money into cannabis growth.
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone to speak against this motion?
Point of information,
Point of information.
what is the, who are executive officers?
Treasurer, chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Is that in the rules?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I mean, that was my guess too, but I will be so.
I have a
Go ahead,
point of
make it.
information.
Point of information.
I guess the point of information, the question I'm trying to ask is, it sounds like, and I say this of Neil, so I want him to be listening to this.
Neil.
Neil, I'm asking you a question.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like when I look at this what we have in the policy, is that you're essentially, this motion is creating another policy that gives us another way to raise money.
Correct, and that's why my initial comment was if somebody would like to make a motion or an amendment to this motion to add it to policy and not just a motion for this body, I think that would probably be appropriate and I would certainly entertain.
I'll make that motion.
So you're moving to amend the policy manual to add, now, if we're gonna add it to the policy manual, we should be very specific.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Point of information.
The substance of this motion shall be included in the policy manual.
Who's gonna determine when the substance gets transcribed into actual text? What-
Executive office.
I mean, you know what
I
I'm
think the
saying?
secretary would do that.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what we said before, but I would just, if I'm doing this on a clean slate, I'll just put a period at the end of approval and do that first. And then say the substance, no, at the end.
Oh, at the end?
Yeah. Approval period, it needed that in.
Oh, well,
Yeah. Okay. the substance of this motion shall be added to the policy manual by the secretary.
There we go.
Second.
There's a second to that motion.
Capitalized secretary.
Oh, yes, let's. Sorry, I didn't have that.
This is discussion about this amendment.
Yes, the amendment.
I'm going to oppose this amendment for the same reason I'm going to oppose the amendment.
Boy, that ride home's gonna be
And
hard.
here's why my wife, as usual, I'm going to oppose this amendment because I do not think this language is yet ready to go into the policy manual. It's not. It's thinking in the way it's worded doesn't fit well into the policy manual. I'm not opposed in the long term to having another way to raise money or a reason for which to raise money in our policy manual. But I don't think we're ready for prime time with these words. And I don't think that's what's needed to solve the real, either the problem for what Joe Burns is talking about or the budgetary authorization thing that we're going to be talking about next. So that's why I'm opposed to this.
Point of information.
I'd like to speak towards the motion.
I'm gonna recognize Mike Ryan. He's been there for a little while. Go ahead.
I think it's fine the way it is. I think we need to try something different. I don't think there's any downside to doing this. So it's just another tool in the toolkit. Let's get on with it.
Point of information.
Well, yeah, I had a point of information regarding, is the period part of the amendment at the beginning of this amendment, or is that part of the original?
The period is not part of the amendment. The period will be there regardless.
Speak against the amendment to the motion.
Request for information.
Now, if the possibility passes, at the next meeting, we could have a revised motion to revisit this at that, per Robert's rules.
Yes.
So if we want to implement this now to get the wheels moving, we can have something fleshed out, much more wordy at the next one. And all we need to do is just have somebody who voted for it to revisit it to the body.
I recognize John.
I'm gonna have to agree with Tom Glass on this one. First of all, I don't feel comfortable, and I don't think we as a body should feel comfortable with giving any individual, and I don't think the secretary is comfortable with it either, giving any individual the spirit of a motion and then let him just amend our policies to whatever he thinks this means. Because I'll tell you, I'm looking around the body right now and hearing the questions being asked over and over. I don't think any two people in this room agree on what it means right now. And we're then asking the secretary to put words. I'm also staunchly opposed to this idea. Let's pass it now and figure out what it means later. For a couple reasons. For a couple reasons. One, I don't think it's responsible of us at all. And two, I know the person who's going to have to figure out what it means, and he's not happy about it. So with that said, I mean, if we're going to talk about needing this and needing it quickly, there is a means by which we can pass this quickly without waiting for the next meeting. Let's get a group together. You don't have to take a formal subcommittee. I'm not trying to make a motion here. But let's get a group of people who care about this policy, even include Mr. Amelie, so he can have input on what this should say. Get the thing fleshed out. Get something that we all agree on what it means. Put it on the forum and pass it then when we have something done. There's no rush on this. Let's get it done once and get it done right.
Is there anyone to speak in favor of the amendment? Renee?
Yes, I would like to speak in the spirit of an example of a situation that the political action department discussed this past legislative session, that if we had designated a directed donation for example, for some of the issues of our platform that some of our donors care a lot about, we could have had someone there walking the halls just for that specific issue. To cover expenses, whatever, just like the lobbyists have for all the other issues that like everyone else does. And I do sincerely believe that some donors would write the check if they knew that they would have someone doing covering their pet issue. And I think this would give the freedom, if I'm wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this would give the freedom for a decision to be made like that within a couple of days' time. So.
I do have to apologize, I was over here, so I haven't heard everything you said.
Okay, but that's the value of this, that it would allow quick response for issues that the body doesn't necessarily have to be involved in.
Anastasia, are you speaking against the amendment?
No, I'm moving to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Motion to postpone is privileged.
It is a privilege,
It
but
is
she
a-
wasn't like.
Okay, so, motion to postpone, we have a second?
Second.
Any objection?
Objection. Yeah.
Okay, so, we don't have to discuss.
Point of information.
We can't.
Question.
I'm pretty sure it's debatable if we want to debate it.
Do we want to debate
Point of information.
point of information?
We're postponing the amendment? Table the amendment?
We're clear what we're talking about. I think.
It's for the whole thing.
1 second, I'm going.
We're gonna confer with Robert. He said it's not privileged, so.
It is debatable. It can apply, majority with notice, 2/3 majority of entire membership. So it take majority of the entire membership.
We need to dispose of the amendment first.
Yeah.
To do what?
Postpone. Yeah, because they have to notice.
Oh,
Meeting that we were postponing.
So the threshold is 2/3?
No, it's whichever less of 2/3 of those present, or let me pull up my sheet.
Smaller.
Smaller,
Oh, 23.
so 23, 2/3 of those present, so it would take 23 to postpone indefinitely.
Okay. It is, we can discuss this. Do we need to discuss postponing?
I was opposed to postponing, I'd like to speak to my opposition.
Wait,
Can I speak to the motion first?
speak to the
Yes.
motion first.
So I think it's pretty clear that the vast majority of us don't understand what the intent of this is, what the effect of this is, what the necessity of this is. And I think that needs to be hashed out. I do not think that we have the time to give it proper consideration at this moment, but it does seem that we have several people who are passionate about getting this resolved. We do have the forums where we can bring this back up and pass it then, or we can do it at the next meeting. I don't necessarily think that's necessary, but I do think that it is hasty to try to get this done today.
Okay,
Point of information,
Just speak again.
point of information.
is it not true that we have a standing committee known as the policy committee that has not been populated this term?
I believe the rules can.
Whitney, do you mind restating your question?
Is it true that we have a standing committee known as the policy committee that is currently vacant, that potentially could be populated to handle this thing very quickly?
It could be, or some people who just care about policy could get together and hang out and do this on their own.
Can I speak against?
Lee, speaking against.
Okay, we got three things going on here that I think are fairly important to discuss. One, we're broke, and we're trying to raise money, and that's what started all this, making it easier for us to raise money. Two, we have this thing to make it easier for us to raise money without having a convoluted process that raises money that is dedicated, best intent, but not locked into a box like the special projects. And 3, we have an amendment to make it permanent. With our discussion, we can say, hey, let's give this a try for 6 months, but not make it permanent if we have a chance to discuss it. Or we can throw the whole thing to the side and still be broke. I kind of don't want to be broke. I'd like to discuss this if we can.
Joe?
Okay, I'm gonna speak for the motion. I don't wanna call it bike shedding, but I'm for the idea that Neil's got here, because this is a hybrid that we need. Right now, the way I see it in this fundraising is we've got 2 options. We can either do a special project and do directed, where we say, give me your money and I guarantee you it'll go to fight this cause. Or we've got, give me your money and I'll spend it on whatever we decide we're gonna spend it on. Those are my 2 options for fundraising right now as I see it. I agree that yes, we're broke, but I don't feel like we need more options to get unbroke at this point. That is an option that I believe we need and we need to put into play, but we are bleeding out right now and we're discussing which hospital we want to go to. It is the way I see this. And it's no offense to anybody, but also, as one of the 3 or 4 guys that are going to be making all of these phone calls and ask for money, I have an ethical problem asking someone to give me money and trust that I will try to do with it what you want done with it. I'm not going to do that. I'm either going to say, I guarantee you your money will go towards X, or I guarantee you that I will spend it in the best way we see fit. Those are the 2 things that I'm going to tell the people I ask money for. I don't think I'll ever be able to tell someone, I'll try. But if not, we'll spend it how we want. So I'm speaking for the motion to basically table this until we can get the people on it to get us something that we might vote for unanimously as a 3rd option for how we go about raising money. But I think today, in this moment, we have a budget problem we got to solve, and we need to get to raising that money. I think this is something that we don't need to discuss right now.
Point of information.
This discussion that we're having right now, so I can understand it, is regarding just the amendment right now, correct?
No, the question before us is on
Because
table.
it was my understanding we were discussing about the amendment and postponing the amendment indefinitely.
No,
Because that's not what I heard.
no. The question before us is on postponing the main motion, including the amendment.
Including this.
Yeah,
Because
so
I
the
didn't hear
amendment
that.
would become moot if we postpone the main motion. All right, one more.
Call the question.
Call the question. I think you're voting.
You want me to just grab?
Grab it.
There's been a motion to call the question, or is there a second? We will proceed directly to a vote on calling the question. It says require 2/3. I'm gonna bring up my little sheet just because. So, and 2/3 is also going to be the threshold to pass the postponement. That said, all in favor of calling the question, raise your hand.
Agree.
The question of postponing indefinitely. All in favor of calling the question, raise your hand. I do recognize 2/3, that passes. We'll now vote on whether or not to postpone this indefinitely, which means it will not be brought up again at this meeting, but can be brought up again after this meeting. All in favor of postponing indefinitely, raise your hand. I do see 2/3 there as well. Postpone. All right. Next up, we have the budget.
Yes.
I'm assuming we're done with your presentation.
Quick little wrap up here. That whole exercise we went through, it did take valuable time with the budget, but it also gave us some of the feedback we're looking for. We're trying to come up with new ways to attack this problem. Keep the ideas coming and send them to development@lptexas.org. We actively seek your input in terms of strategy and tactical maneuvers. So keep it coming.
I have one more feedback to this presentation. That is, you asked the question, Andrew, just a minute ago about what do I do about these guys? We'll give us $200
Yeah.
right. My take is, what development needs to be doing now is asking for the quote special project of general funding the operations of the party to get that shored up. We need enough monthly contributions or commitments to do an annual check or whatever to be able to fund base operations. And we need to make the case, that's a case that needs to be made, that, we need to have a website. We need to do the basic functions, and I think we're about as lean as we can be. We've gotten leaner and leaner and leaner. The solution now, which we're about to go into this other conversation, is to raise money. And one of the things I've learned in my life is if you don't ask for what you want, you are unlikely to get it. And so what I love is the fact that you guys have stepped up and decided to start asking for us. And I just think you guys need to get to work. And I think we can, as we go into our budget here in just a second, we can make some different expectations based on the work that you guys are planning to do than what maybe has been presented to us. So that's what I have to say on that.
With that said, we will move into a discussion of motions related to the budget. I guess I'll recap from the treasurer's report. This is the budget proposed by the treasurer. I went into details earlier about how it was derived, but I guess I'll ask real briefly. Does anyone have any questions about this budget? I see none. Does anyone have any motions they wish to make?
I have a point of information. And that is, how much money do we have in the bank at this moment that is not committed to be for other things like our what do you call it, our reserve? Or what is that?
So reserve is a little over 10K. I'm gonna say those two numbers is 10.5. So that would be like, we'll call it 33K. That is not committed to.
How do you want to make that? That also includes the 8,000 for convention.
Oh, yes. Okay, so take that off, that's 25K. 25K.
Okay.
All right, that's it. Mr. Thomas.
I'll move the budget as proposed by the treasurer and authorize expenditures in accordance with the budget.
Okay.
Does that mean authorization for the entire year, for the whole next year?
Yeah, the full, I think it has a date. This is just 2020, right?
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
Point of information.
Point of information, yes.
Does our development team have any proposed projections for the budget items that you're focused on right now?
Not yet. We're in that process though, of determining that.
Okay. All right, so the motion that has been made by Arthur is this budget as proposed by the treasurer, that we pass this as a budget that goes back to item number 1 in our bylaws. And for the expense side, that would authorize the expenses listed in there for 2020.
Second.
There is a second. I'm going to recognize Ms. Wilford.
I move to amend the motion to add department-specific discretionary funding reflective of 2019's budget, and additionally, $3,000 discretionary in development.
Okay. All right. I'm going to pause everybody.
Tell me you proposed two things.
Yes.
What was the first one?
2019's department-specific discretionary spending.
John, are you gonna wipe out that motion?
Oh, he tried.
I would still say that.
Say, okay, yeah.
Even though it failed, that we keep it.
Fair point.
It's rejection.
Data order.
And an additional $3,000 in the development department discretionary.
Sure. Sorry.
Just one committee. Okay, I'm gonna start with Arthur.
Arthur, did you say proposed?
About the treasurer.
I probably said proposed, but I'm
Okay.
trying not to pick on John too much.
No, that's fine, that's my job.
What did Gary write down? That's what matters.
Proposed by, not the secretary.
Treasurer, capital T.
Is that what's good?
Sure.
Okay, and then, so now we have the main motion, and I'm going to add, track changes.
I put for 2020, because it's kind of.
Oh, for 2020, yeah.
That was better.
There we go. And then I'm going to track changes. Now we have a fun part.
John, that for 2020 should go after the word budget. That looks like you're saying the treasurer for 2020.
All right.
My English teacher would.
She's proud of you.
Actually, she'll be happy that I saw it.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna ask you to kind of explain that in a moment. Not for transcription purposes, but because I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so our departments had some discretionary spending in the 2019 budget. It was the first year that we had department-specific discretionary as opposed to breaking it down for mailings and stuff like that. And in the proposed 2020 budget, except for operations, none of the departments have discretionary spending.
Let me ask, because there's actually some conflicting wording here. You say the 2019 department-specific discretionary funding and $3,000. Are you saying $3,000 in
In
addition
addition
to what they
to
have?
what was authorized to,
Okay.
or what was budgeted to development in 2019.
An additional.
Which was in the 2019 budget for each one of those.
It's an additional discretionary.
Anastasia, can you please make sure I wrote all that down correctly for your?
You can rearrange the words.
Do what?
You can rearrange the words if you want to.
That works for me.
Okay.
Can
Is
we
there
go across?
is there a second to this amendment? Second. Okay, Mr.
Point of
Gordon.
information, actually, this is several points of information.
Okay.
First, what was the total amount of the department-specific discretionary funding in 2019?
I can pull that up.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so, instead of adding it all up, I guess I'll go through line by line, if you want to write it down and give us the total at the end, that's fine. Oh, IT discretionary was $600. I hate this little scrolly thing.
Which we didn't use any, I don't think.
No. IT discretionary was 600? Yeah. Operations discretionary was 900. Public relations, no, whoa, 1122, that was what was actually spent. So, yeah, 1122. No, that's how much they spent, not how much was authorized. So it's 1122.
Where you get 1122?
It's on this left.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so, operations discretionary was 1122. Public relations department discretionary was 400. I'm gonna try to go too fast. Political action department discretionary was 2300. Events department discretionary was 1600. Development department discretionary was 1100, which should now be 4100 with the additional 3000. And that's all the discretionary.
And everybody came in well under budget on their discretionary budgets.
All right, so that's answered the point of information. One point of information there too was, coming back to the treasurer's report, I just want to make sure I understand. How much revenue did we raise so far this year, or a better way of saying it is what we're projecting to raise in 2019?
So far this year, our total income is 15,219. I'm going to get a calculator running.
Is that through the end of the third quarter?
I think it's through the end of last month. So let's see. Oh, October 23rd.
Okay.
So I'm going to call it all of October. Let's just. So that's
So that's 5, 6.
yeah.
So we need to add 1/6 to that.
9, 10, 12, 18,262.
Okay. Okay, next point of information is, when you add up all the amounts that she just added to the 18,000, what does that come to the total budget, proposed budget for this amendment?
Let me. Excuse me, I don't have an actual keypad, so I get to.
Doing great, John.
Plus 11, so 2,100, plus the 3,000 that goes into.
10,000.
So we're adding 10,000 to 18,000 to make a $28,000 budget?
I do believe so, but let me double check that first number you said of 18,000 before I confirm. No, well, 27, so yeah.
So 10 to 18, about 28,000.
Well, that's the income, so it's gonna be 10 to 17, it's 27, small difference.
All right. So I'm going to say, essentially, this is what was being proposed. We'll take it from an $18,000 expenditure budget to a $27,000 expenditure budget. That's what I'm trying to understand. Okay. All right. So my final question is to develop. Do you guys think in 2020, if you go out and ask money from people to take care of base business, that you can raise somewhere around what's it?
Well, 17,378 is the total expenses. So are you looking for our total expenses, or are you looking for the extra?
Well, I'm talking about the proposed expenditures for 2020, which is $27,000.
27, yes.
So, and we raised essentially 18,000. We think we're going to get 18,000 this year. So we're talking about $9,000 more. Okay. Do you guys think you can raise $9,000 more in 2020 than we did in 2019 by going out and asking people to contribute?
Yeah, is that a question?
Yes. Do you
Yes, I believe so. With the cooperation and input from my colleagues here and the short answer is yes. Short answer is yes.
Point of information,
Point of information.
can you show us the number for last year, election year? Because I believe our donations are generally higher during election years.
The number for what? Our income?
Or
Or
2018, 16.
28.
2015 and 16 is what we would, wanting to know what 19 to 20 is gonna jump, we would wanna look at what 15 was and what it jumped to in 16 to see what another contentious election year brought us for a percentage increase.
I'm hearing a lot of your, what year of our
2016.
2016?
And 15, what did it go, what was it in 15, what did it jump to in 16?
What's the delta?
Yes, between
What's the
15 and
delta?
16.
Okay, that's gonna take a little while, so I'm gonna have to dig through old treasurer reports. I don't know if you want to recess for that.
Oh, we're in deliberation now.
Okay, let me pull that up. I'm gonna allow deliberations to continue, and I will come back around to your question once I have an answer.
I'm gonna vote against this amendment. It's too much money, and even, we can't afford it. Even if we could raise it, I don't know if we necessarily want to spend it the way this boxes us in. And so I'm gonna vote against this, and I'm gonna vote for the treasurer's proposed budget.
Mr. Dagner.
So in general, I don't particularly oppose the additional spending, assuming you can raise it. I think that we've got, as somebody said, you gotta spend money to make money. However, my treasurer is not here. My treasurer and my chair currently cannot get on the same page with what a budget should be. The development department has not yet given us an actual forecast in the budget. We don't usually sign off the deficit budgets. This is 9,000 on 17 is a pretty big deficit budget, even though it's pretty small dollars. And what I would like to have happen if we're going to sign off the deficit budget is have an actual budget put together, not an amendment from the floor to stuff in last year's numbers with the treasurer not present and no full budget process having been done. So given that, I will be voting against the amendment and for the motion. And at such time in our next meeting, as the development department comes up with an actual forecast, which I'm hopeful they do, and hopefully the operations team can come up with, frankly, probably the same discretionary spending that they would like to do here, but actually have run through with the treasurer and with the development team, then we can vote to amend that budget or give them additional authorizations.
Point of information.
Point of information.
Why are we wanting to put 3,000 extra on development? Seems like a very specific number.
I probably technically shouldn't answer this, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer. I don't know the specifics of why 3,000, but I think the extra money is intended so they can do things like mallards and other fundraising activity. They'll have that money to spend. I don't know why 3,000 or 2,000.
And information, or I mean, no.
Go ahead.
I can't do it.
Board discussion. I started off thinking I was gonna vote with Anastasia, but I think I've been turned to vote against the amendment to add extra. And the reason why, in addition to the arguments that already been made, the other thing is I know that with this amendment, that leaves the authorization for all of that expenditure in the thing. This is a combo thing of budget and authorization. We don't have to do a combo motion to do budget and authorization. And the only way I would be able to vote for a budget that's higher is if we only authorize the base amount and not the discretionary stuff, and wait until we saw what we were doing with fundraising before I authorize the discretionary funds. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and vote this one down. I'm not going to make an amendment to the way I was thinking. I'm just going to vote it down. So that's where I am.
Real quick over here for the point of information earlier, I tried to pull a QuickBooks so I could run a report, and I am getting the infinite load and then reload. I have refreshed this a couple times. I don't know what QuickBooks is not having our business thing. So I guess no, I cannot at this time pull that up.
Point of information, it should be in Ignite, correct? I should be able to go back and just pull.
Oh, I could probably go through the old meetings, find a treasurer's report, do the subtraction. I'm not gonna do that right now, but if someone else wants to go dig into Ignite, y'all all have access, or, at least anyone who's requested it. So there you go. Mr. Turner.
Is it possible for me to propose a substitute amendment? Yes.
You can.
To Anastasia.
Yeah, hold on.
Or amend.
You can amend the red text.
All right, I'm just wanting to amend it instead of throwing in 2019's numbers plus 3,000. just to add 600 to the development department, trusting that at a further select meeting, we can authorize more money after the development department gives us their forecast. So that would give us 600, for development, 600 to work with right now, and trust we can have more later.
Second.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second.
I don't understand the motion yet.
So the motion is, I'm not gonna talk a lot because track changes on the work zone level, but the motion is, we're taking out this department-specific discretionary funding and additional, we're taking out all of that, and instead saying add $600 to development's discretionary, so they have something to work with, but without all the other stuff.
That we get rid of the 2019's department-specific discretionary funding and the 3,000, or you're replacing with just $600 for it out?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I said 600 because that would keep us under the 18,000.
Cool. Is this about the second level amendment, or is that just a big stretch? Okay, go ahead.
Are we so deep that it's not amendable anymore?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then I don't need it.
Ms. Gladys.
Call the question.
All pending or just this one?
Just this one.
Okay,
Point of information.
point of information.
Where the last amendment was to get rid of the 2019.
Yes, so the last amendment is going to get rid of everything that's in red, and instead say plus $600 for the development department discretionary. So that's what the amendment, we have called the question now, so we will vote on whether or not
I
to.
have a request for information, if I may, before
Request for
we,
information.
okay. What rules are there? Let's say we pass a bare bones budget that's just very limited, whatever, and then, let's say in January, the body meets again. Is the body, within our rules and bylaws, able to just do a new budget once we have all the information?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. All that said, we will now proceed to a vote on whether or not to call the question. This requires 2/3. All in favor of calling the question, raise your hand. All opposed? We will now proceed to a vote on this second level amendment, which will replace everything in red with and an additional $600 for the development department discretionary. All in favor of that amendment to the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? That passes. If you'll give me just a second, I will keep that on the screen.
Call the question.
Real quick, not quite recognized yet, but I do like your enthusiasm. Okay, there we go. Someone seeking to be recognized?
Can I motion to amend?
Yes, we can.
There's a specific reason for this. I'd like to amend plus $100 department discretionary fund simply because I don't want to sit through another Tuesday phone call where we figure out where to find $40 for business cards. No, for all departments, $100, which would be 600 total, right?
Okay, yeah. So, all right, let me clarify before I go to do this. Are you trying to take the 600 and split it between the departments?
No,
or
I'm trying to
600
add one additional $600 amount that's $100 per apartment, just so we don't have to waste $100 worth of time figuring out where we're going to pay for $38 business cards.
So that would be $500 because.
500, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to type this out real quick. And it's going bold so we can tell the difference. And tell me if this is what you said.
I was saying.
Hold up.
That's 1,100.
For the other 5 departments.
So that's $2,500.
No, it's 11.
To be split.
500 other split 5 ways.
Yeah, I was thinking 100 per department, but that works as well.
Well, it will be. I'm splitting.
Even.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say.
Equally.
Oh, yes.
Ooh, yeah, be careful there.
Now it's $100.
There's a second on
Sorry.
Yes.
Am I
reading this right? This is a motion to authorize the budget and authorize the spending all in one swoop.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
All right.
Call the question.
Second. Is there any objection to calling the question?
No.
All right. Everyone in favor of this second level amendment, raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Passes. All right, so we can unbold that. So now we have one amendment. There we go. All right. Can we, yes.
Call all pending questions.
Second.
Call pending questions. Is there objection to this? I hear no objection. Okay, well, that's a good start. We'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? Carries. All in favor of the amended motion, raise your hand. All opposed? Also carries. We have a budget and an authorization. Yes, and let it carried with, you know, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna check on what that number is just to make sure we did it right.
You count it, you.
Majority of the entire body is 25 right now. All in favor, everyone who's in favor of that motion, raise your hand. I want to make sure we had at least 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and we're one short, it looks like.
I'll do it.
I'll ask for the opposed so we can record it in the minutes, but all opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 opposed.
And people can change their vote?
Until the results are announced, yes.
Well, you announced the results with the motion carried.
Well, we hadn't finished the count of the opposed, so I could have announced.
You said it carried. Then you decided to count.
There was a question.
Because I asked the question, did it carry with majority?
Yeah, it has a higher threshold than just the majority, so he's asking did we hit that higher threshold. Ms. Hoover.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
There's a second. There is objection.
Now.
Here's an order. I want to check real quick. I didn't think it was, but
I know you.
it is debatable.
But you can always ask points of information.
Debatable, no. It was adjourned to a future time. This is not adjourned to a future time.
I don't know what that
This is not debatable. All in favor of adjourning, raise your hand. All opposed? Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you guys for raising the number. I have the
Name badges. Turn in your name badges.
Let me stick it back there and give
Don't tell me what to do.
I don't like bullies, and I don't like people telling me what to do. That's the lead track philosophy.
Mainly.
Am I being detained?
I'll let you answer to my wife.
I took,
She's more intimidating.